how the walk-on worked. I didn't hear the regular redeem. Really stream elements. Make me sign in again. What? Okay, there it goes. No, we are free of that. It's okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome in. For some reason, OBS does not think I'm signed in. Yeah, thank you, Oni. Well, it doesn't think I'm signed into my own chat. That's just kind of doofus-like. Nope, that's working. Oh. I wonder what it is with not everything wanting to work at the same time. Yeah, guilty. It should know that I'm signed in. Otherwise, it wouldn't let me do anything right now. Yeah, that's probably a good thing, Noni. So, since you're both here, did you get your Christmas cards? Because I mailed them on the same day, so hopefully you both should have gotten them. Not that I don't trust the postal service by any means. It should have been delivered. It was in the box I sent. As Guilty got the Christmas card, and I sent you a package, Oni. I have to double check on that, because it should have shown up yesterday. Let's see. Yeah, it says it was put in your mailbox yesterday, Oni. Guilty had no ball. Okay. Well, hopefully it's there. Guilty, did you get your uh, Christmas card? Because you can't put trackers on the cards, just packages. I could put trackers on the cards, but I don't have my stickers for it anymore. Did you get the Christmas card I sent you? Oh, you didn't get mail yet? Well, it was like normal first class postage, so it should only take 2 days, supposedly, but you know. How things are going right now, you never know. Okay. Other than that, I'm always a little worried about things not getting to people on time. But anyway, we are doing fairy tales tonight because it is Friday night, and that's when we do fairy tales. I still can't think of anything at all to do for my anniversary. That's just. I never really put thought into it. I tried to do something last year, and, well, it didn't turn out at all, so. Just like I didn't think about doing a subathon because I didn't have anything to do for a subathon, and oh, no one really turned out for it anyway, so it didn't matter. But I am trying to get some things worked out right now. I mean, I've got the beast built. Now I just have to get everything else set up for it. And I'm going to do a lot of cleaning and rearranging and shelving and reshelving of books to try to make space for it. I've been doing a lot of testing on it. I haven't tried streaming from it yet. But I'm going to try to get stuff done. And as I am a very cheap bastard, I've been trying to find ways of getting just like music or something, but of course I've been toying around with this thing called Songer, and yeah. Of course, I just have issues finding. I'm really picky about how I want something to sound, so trying to trust AI on doing anything isn't exactly high on my priority list. You just never look in your mailbox? Well, occasionally people get mail. It's this thing that guys in blue uniforms drop off in boxes. You're welcome, Oni. No, it's not really high-tech sorcery. It's just very slow-moving owls. Hey, Squall. Let's switch over to the library here. Ah, here we are. Make sure my sound effects are going normally. Okay. Yeah, OBS still doesn't think that I'm logged in. That's just stupid. That's not even letting me log in. Oh, it's weird. It's not letting me chat as myself. Stream Elements, your OBS extension is just a real pain in the ass. Okay. It doesn't think I have any of my own points to spend because it does not think it is logged in. Oh well, I guess we won't be catching any Pokemon tonight. But anyway, we are doing Fairy Tales tonight, and we are already running late. We're late for a very important date. I haven't been on a date in 20 years. Oh, this is a fun one. Our first wonderful fairy tale for the night is about the abuse of labor. No, our first. Yeah, serious face. Okay. Our first wonderful fairy tale for this Friday night of fairy tales. That's The Cunning Shoemaker. Yeah, the shoe cobbler elves really should have formed a union, but they were doing good to work for food and clothing. They don't even have dental. All I can think is that one scene from Shrek 3. No, Shrek 2. Yeah, Shrek 2. Yeah, we're here to represent magical creatures, both evil and benign. Anyway. Our first fairy tale, if I can keep a straight enough face to start it. This is why I have both the story and the stream, both VODs uploaded on YouTube. Because the people who don't watch the stream ones, they don't get all this wonderful outside activity. If they just watch the fairy tale sections, I kind of cut all of this part out. And I don't have the sound alerts recording on it either. I have the sound alerts recording on my recording, but they don't end up on the VOD. So. Trying this again. Our first fairy tale for this wonderful Friday night. The Cunning Shoemaker. Once upon a time there lived a shoemaker called Master Joseph, who could get no work to do and was so poor that he and his wife nearly died of hunger. At last he said to her, "It is no use on waiting here. I can find nothing. I shall go to the Mascaluta. Perhaps I shall be more lucky." So he went Mascaluta and walked through the streets crying, "I want some shoes." And very soon a window was pushed up, and a woman's head was thrust out of it. "Here are a pair for you to patch," she said, and he sat down on her doorstep and set about patching them. "How much do I owe you?" she asked when they were done. "A shilling." "Here's an 18-piece, and good luck to you." And he went on his way. He turned into the next street and set up his cry again, and it was not long before another window was pushed up and another head appeared. "Here's some shoes for you to patch." And the shoemaker sat down on the doorstep and patched them. "How much do I owe you?" asked the woman when the shoes were finished. "Oh, a florin." "Well, here's a crown piece, and good luck to you." And she shut the window. "Well," thought the shoemaker, "I've done finely, but I will not go back to my wife just yet, as if only to go on this rate I shall soon have enough money to buy a donkey." Having made up his mind what he best to do, he stayed in town a few days longer, until he had 4 gold pieces safe in his purse. Then he went to the market, and for 2 of them he bought a good, strong donkey, and mounted on its back and rode home to Catania. But as he entered a thick wood, he saw in the distance a band of robbers who were coming quickly towards him. "I am lost," he thought. "They are sure to take me for all the money that I have earned, and I shall be as poor as I was. What can I do?" However, being a clever little man and full of spirit, he did not lose heart, but taking 5 florins, he fastened them out of sight under the donkey's thick mane, and then rode on. Directly the robber came up to him and seized him exactly as he had foretold, and took away all of his money. "Oh, dear friends," he cried, wringing his hands, "I am but a poor shoemaker, and have nothing but this donkey left in the world." As he spoke, the donkey gave himself a shake. Down fell the 5 florins. "Hey, where did these come from?" asked the robbers. Replied the shoemaker, "you have guessed my secret. The donkey is a golden donkey, and he supplies me with all my money." "Sell him to us," said the robbers, "and we will give you any price you like." The shoemaker at first declared that nothing would induce him to sell him, but at last he agreed to hand him over to the robbers for 50 gold pieces. But listen to what I tell you, he said. You must each take it in turn to own him for a night and a day, or else you will be fighting over all the money. And with these words they parted, the robbers driving the monkey to their cave in the forest, and the shoemaker returning home, very pleased with the success of his trick. He just stopped on the way to pick up a good dinner, and the next day spent most of his gains in buying a small vineyard. Meanwhile, the robbers had arrived at a cave where they lived, and the captain, calling them all around, announced that it was his rights to have the donkey for the first night. His companions agreed, and then he told his wife to put a mattress in the stable. She asked if he had gone out of his mind, but he answered crossly, "What is it to you? Do as you are bid, and tomorrow I shall bring you some treasures." Very early the captain awoke and searched the stable, but could find nothing, and guessed that Master Jophus had been making fun of him. "Well," he said to himself, "if I have been taken in, the other shall not come off any better." So, when one of his men arrived and asked him eagerly how much money he had got, he answered gaily, "Oh, comrade, if you knew, but I shall say nothing about it till everyone has had his turn." One after another they all took the donkey, but no money was forthcoming to anybody. At length, when all the band had been tricked, they held a council and resolved to march to the shoemaker's house and punish him well for his cunning. Just as before, the shoemaker saw them a long way off, and began to think of how he would outwit them again. Then he had hit upon a plan, and he called his wife and said to her, "Take a bladder and fill it with blood and bind it around your neck. When the robbers come and demand the money they gave me for the donkey, I shall shout at you and tell you to get it quickly. You must argue with me and decline to obey me, and then I shall plunge my knife into the bladder, and you must fall to the ground as if you were dead. There you must lie till I play on my guitar, then get up and begin to dance." The wife made haste to do as she was bid, and there was no time to lose, for the robbers were drawing very near the house. They entered with a great noise and overwhelmed the shoemaker with reproaches for having deceived them about the donkey. "The poor beast must have lost his power owing to the change of masters," he said. "But we will not quarrel about it. You shall have back the 50 gold pieces that you gave for him. Eita!" he cried to his wife. "Go quickly to the chest upstairs and bring down the money for these gentlemen." "Wait a little," she answered. "I must first bake this fish. It will be spilt if I leave it now." "Go this instant. You are bid," shouted the shoemaker, stamping as if he was in a great passion. But she did not stir. He drew his knife and stabbed her in the neck. The blood spurted out freely, and she fell to the ground as if she was dead. "What have you done?" asked the robbers, looking at him in dismay. "The poor woman was doing nothing." Perhaps I was hasty, but it is easily set right," replied the shoemaker, taking down his guitar and beginning to play. Hardly had he struck the first notes than his wife sat up and got on her feet and danced. The robbers stared with mouths open, and at last said, "Master Joseph, you may keep the 50 gold pieces, but tell us what you will take for your guitar. You must sell it to us." "Oh, that's impossible," replied the shoemaker. "Every time I have a quarrel with my wife, I just strike her dead and give vent to my anger." "This has become such a habit for me that I don't think I could break myself of it, and, of course, if I got rid of the guitar, I would never bring her back to life again." However, the robbers would not listen to him, and at last he consented to take 40 pieces for the guitar. Then they all returned to their cave in the forest, delighted with their new purchase, and longing for a chance of trying its powers. The captain declared that the first trial belonged to him, and after that the others might have their turn. That evening he called to his wife and said, What have you got for supper?"
"Macaroni,"
answered she. "Why have you not boiled a fish?" he cried, and stabbed her in the neck so she fell down dead. The captain, who was not in the least angry, seized the guitar and began to play it. But let him play as loud as he would, the dead woman never stirred. "Oh, lying shoemaker, you abominable knave! Twice has he got the better of me, but I will pay him out." He raged and he swore, but it did him no good. The fact remained that he had killed his wife, and she would not be coming back. The next morning, one of the robbers came to fetch the guitar to hear what had happened. "Well, how's it got on?" "Oh, splendidly. I stabbed my wife and then began to play, and now she is well as ever." "Did it really? Well, this evening I will try it myself." And of course, the same thing happened over again, till all the wives had secretly been killed. And when there were no more left, they whispered to each other the dreadful tale and swore to be avenged on the shoemaker. The band lost no time in setting out for his house, and as before, the shoemaker saw them coming from afar. He called to his wife, who was washing in the kitchen. "Listen, Eta, when the robbers come and ask for me, say I have gone to the vineyard. Then tell the dog to call me, and chase him from the house." When he had given these directions, he ran out the back door and hid behind a barrel. A few moments later, the robbers arrived and called loudly for the shoemaker. "Alas, good gentleman, he is out in the vineyard. I will send the dog after him at once. Here, now quickly to the vineyard and tell your master the gentlemen are here who wish to speak to him. Go as fast as you can." And she opened the door and let the dog out. "You can really trust the dog to call your husband?" asked the robbers. "Oh, dear me, yes. He understands everything, and will always carry out any message I give him." By and by, the shoemaker came in and said, "Good morning, gentlemen. The dog tells me you wish to speak to me." "Yes, we do," replied the robber. "We have come to speak to you about that guitar. It is your fault that we have all murdered our wives, and though we played as you told us, none of them ever came back to life." "You could not have played properly," said the shoemaker. "It was your own fault." "Well, we will forget all about it," answered the robbers, "if only you will sell us your dog." "Oh, that is impossible. I should never get on without him." But the robbers offered him 40 gold pieces, and at last he agreed to let them have the dog. So they departed, taking the dog with them, and when they got back to their cave, the captain declared that it was his right to have the first trial. Then he called his daughter and said to her, "I'm going to the inn. If anyone wants me, let the loose dog, and send him to call me." About an hour after someone arrived on business, the girl untied the dog and said, "Go to the inn and call my father." The dog bounded off, but ran straight to the shoemaker. When the robber got home and found no dog, he thought he must have gone back to his old master, and thought night had already fallen, when off after him. "Master Joseph, is the dog here?" he said. "Ah, yes, the poor beast is so fond of me, you must give him time to get accustomed to the new ways." So the captain brought the dog back, and the following morning handed him over to another of the band, just saying if the animal could really do what the shoemaker had said. The second robber carefully kept his own counsel and fetched the dog secretly back from the shoemaker, and so on through the whole band. At length, when everybody had suffered, they met and told the whole story, and the next day they all marched off in a fury to the man who had made a game of them. After reproaching him with having deceived them, they tied him up in a sack and told him they were going to throw him out into the sea. The shoemaker lay quite still and let them do as they would. They came to a church, and the robber said, "The sun is hot, and this bag is heavy. Let's just leave it here and go in and rest. So they put the sack down by the roadside and went into the church. Now, on the hill nearby, there was a swineherd looking after a great herd of pigs and whistling merrily. When Master Joseph heard him, he cried out as loud as he could, "I won't! I won't! I won't, I say!" "What won't you do?" the swineherd. "Oh," replied the shoemaker, "they want me to marry the king's daughter, and I won't do it." "How lucky you are," said the swineherd. "Now, if it were only me—" "Oh, if that's all," replied the cunning shoemaker, "get you into the sack and let me out." And then the swineherd opened the sack and took the place of the shoemaker, who went gaily off, driving the pigs before him. When the robbers were arrested, they came out of the church and took up the sack and carried it to the sea, where they threw it in, and it sank directly. As they came back to meet the shoemaker, and stared at him with open mouths. "Oh, if only you knew how many pigs there were in the sea," he said. "And the deeper you go, the more there are. I have just brought up these, and mean to return for some more." "There's still more left in there." "Oh, more than I could count," replied the shoemaker. "I will show you what you must do." Then he led the robbers back to the shore. "Now," he said, "you must each of you tie a stone to your necks, so that you may be sure to go deep enough, for I found the pigs that you saw very deep down indeed." Then the robbers tied stones around their necks, and jumped in, and were drowned. And Master Joseph drove his pigs home, and was a rich man to the end of his days. Yeah. That was a shoemaker. That was a clever shoemaker. There's other versions of it where it's a tailor. So. Which is really strange because these are coming from a book translated in English, from a book that was translated from German, of Sicilian stories. How is that for confusing? Anyway, our next wonderful fairy tale for this Friday night. The king who would have a beautiful wife. "50 years ago there lived a king who was very anxious to get married, but as he was quite determined that his wife should be as beautiful as the sun, the thing was not so easy as it seemed, for no maiden came up to his standard. Then he commanded a trusty servant to search through the length and breadth of the land till he found a girl fair enough to be queen, and if he had a good luck to discover one, he was to bring her back with him. The servant went out once on his journey and sought high and low, in castles and cottages, but though pretty maidens were plentiful as blackberries, he felt sure that none of them would please the king. One day he had wandered far and wide, and was feeling very tired and thirsty. By the roadside stood a tiny little house, and here he knocked and asked for a cup of water. Now, in this house dwelt two sisters. One was 80 and the other was 90 years old. They were very poor and earned their living by spinning. They had kept their hands very soft and white, like the hands of a girl, and when the water was passed through the lattice and the servant saw the small, delicate fingers, he said to himself, "A maiden must indeed be lovely if she has a hand like that." or she could be a hand model. And he made haste back and told the king. "Go back at once," said the Majesty, "and try to get a sight of her." The faithful servant departed on his errand without losing any time, and again he knocked at the door of the little house and begged for some water. As before, the old woman did not open the door, but passed the water through the lattice. "Do you live alone?" asked the man. "No," replied she. "My sister lives with me. We are poor girls and have to work for our bread." "How old are you?" I'm 18, and she is 20. Then the servant went back to the king and told him all he knew, and his Majesty answered, "I will have the 18-year-old one. Go and bring her here." The servant returned a third time to the little house and knocked at the door. In reply to his knock, the lattice window was pushed open, and a voice inquired what he was wanting. "The king has desired to bring back the youngest of you to become his queen." "Tell his Majesty I am ready to do his bidding, but since my birth no ray of light has fallen upon my face. If it should ever do, I shall instantly grow withered. Therefore I pray you, his most gracious Majesty, to send his evening a shut carriage, and I will return to the castle." When the king heard this, he ordered his great golden carriage to be prepared, and in it to be placed magnificent robes, and the old woman wrapped herself in a thick veil and was driven to the castle. The king was eagerly awaiting her, and when he arrived he begged her politely to raise her veil and let him see her face. "But," she answered, "here the tapers are too bright and the light too strong. Would you have me turn withered under your very eyes?" And the king believed her words, and the marriage took place without the veil being once lifted. Afterwards, when they were alone, he raised the corner, for he knew for the first time that he had wedded a wrinkled old woman, and in a furious burst of anger he dashed open the window and flung her out. But luckily for her, her clothes caught on the nail in the wall, and kept her hanging between the heaven and the earth. While she was thus suspended, expecting every moment to be dashed to the ground, 4 fairies happened to pass by. "Oh, look, sisters," cried one. "Surely that is the old woman that the king sent for. Shall we wish her clothes may give away, that she may be dashed on the ground?" "Oh, no, no," exclaimed another. "Let us wish her something good. I myself will wish her youth, and I beauty, and I wisdom, and I a tender heart." So spake the fairies, and went on their way, leaving the most beautiful maiden in the world behind them. The next morning, when the king looked out from his window, he saw this lovely creature hanging on the nail. "Oh, what have I done? Surely I must have been blind last night." And he ordered long ladders to be brought, and the maiden to be rescued. Then he fell on his knees before her and prayed her to forgive him, and the great feast was made in her honor. Some days after, the 90-year-old sister came to the palace and asked for the queen. "Who was that hideous witch?" said the king. "Oh, an old neighbor of mine who was half silly," she replied. But the old woman looked at her steadily and knew her again and said, "How have you managed to grow so young and beautiful? I should like to be young and beautiful too." This question she repeated the whole day long, till at length the queen lost patience and said, "I had to cut off my old head, and the new one grew in its place." Then the old woman went to a barber and spoke to him, saying, "I will give you all you ask if you will only cut off my head so that I may become young and lovely." "But, my good woman, if I do that, you will die." But the old woman would listen to nothing, and at last the barber took out his knife and struck the first blow at her neck. "Ah!" She shrieked as she felt the pain. "Il faut souffrir et payer," said the barber, who had been to France. And for a second blow, her head rolled off, and the old woman was dead, good and for all. You can tell what kind of night this is when I do two somewhat gruesome stories. Let's continue. Our third story for the evening, Catherine and Her Destiny. Long ago there lived a rich merchant who, besides possessing more treasures than any king in the world, had in his great hall 3 chairs, one of silver, one of gold, and one of diamonds. But his greatest treasure of all was his only daughter, who he called Catherine. One day Catherine was sitting in her own room when suddenly the door flew open, and in came a tall and beautiful woman holding her hands a little wheel. "Catherine," she said, going up to the girl, "would you rather have a happy youth or a happy old age?" Catherine was so taken by surprise that she did not know what to answer, and the lady repeated again, "Would you rather have a happy youth or a happy old age?" Then Catherine thought to herself, "If I say a happy youth, then I shall have to suffer all the rest of my life. No, I'll bear trouble now, and have something better to look forward to." So she looked up, and she replied, "Give me happy old age." "So be it," said the lady, and turned her wheel as she spoke, vanishing the next moment as suddenly as she had come. Now, this beautiful lady was the destiny of poor Catherine. Only a few days after this, the merchant heard the news that all his finest ships, laden with the richest merchandise, had been sunk in a storm, and he was left a poor beggar. The shock was too much for him. He took to his bed, and in a short time he was dead from his disappointment. Like having one number off a lottery ticket. So poor Catherine was left alone in the world without a penny or a creature to help her. But she was a brave girl and full of spirit, and soon made up her mind that the best thing she could do was to go to the nearest town and become a servant. She lost no time in getting herself ready, and did not take long over her journey, and she was passed down the chief street of the town. A noble lady saw her out of the window, and struck by her sad face, said to her, "Why are you going all alone, my pretty girl?" "Ah, my lady, I am very poor, and must go to service to earn my bread." "I will take you into my service," she said, and Catherine served her well. Some time after, her mistress said to Catherine, "I am obliged to go out for a long while, and must lock the house door, so that no thieves will get in." So she went away, and Catherine took her work and sat down in the window, and suddenly the door burst in, and in came her destiny. "Oh, there you are, Catherine. Do you really think I was going to let you live in peace?" And as she spoke, she walked to the linen press where Catherine's mistress kept all her finest sheets and underclothes, tore everything to pieces, and flung them on the floor. Poor Catherine wrung her hands and wept, for she thought to herself, "When my lady comes back and sees all this ruin, she will think it is my fault." And she started up and fled through the door. Then Destiny took all the pieces and made them whole again and put them back in the press, and when everything was tidy, she too left the house. When the mistress reached home, she called for Catherine, but no Catherine came. "Can she have robbed me?" thought the old lady, but looked hastily around the house, and nothing was missing. She wondered why Catherine should have disappeared like this, but she heard no more from her, and in a few days she had filled her place. Meanwhile, Catherine wandered on and on without knowing very well where she was going, till at last she came to another town. Just as before, a noble lady happened to see her passing her window and called out to her, "Where are you going all alone, my pretty girl?" And Catherine answered, "My lady, I am very poor and must go to service to earn my bread." "I will take you into my service," said the lady, and Catherine served her very well as well, and hoped that she might now be left in peace. But exactly as before, one day that Catherine was left in the house alone, Destiny came again, and spoke to her with hard words. "What are you here now?" And in a passion she tore up everything she saw, till in sheer misery poor Catherine rushed out of the house. And so it befell for 7 years, and directly Catherine found a fresh place, her Destiny came and forced her to leave it. After 7 years, however, Destiny seemed to get tired of persecuting her, and a time of peace set in with Catherine. She had been chased away from her last house by Destiny's wicked pranks. She had taken service with another lady, who told her that it would be part of her daily work to walk to a mountain that overshadowed the town, and climbing up to the top, she was to lay on the ground some lovely loaves of freshly baked bread, and cry in a loud voice, "Destiny, our mistress, my mistress," 3 times, and then her lady's Destiny would come and take away the offering. "That I will gladly do," said Catherine. So the years went by, and Catherine was still there, and every day she climbed the mountain with her basket of bread on her arm. She was happier than she had ever been, but sometimes when no one saw her, she would weep as though she thought of her old life, and how different it was than the one she was now leading. One day a lady saw her and said, "Catherine, what is it? Why are you always weeping?" Then Catherine told her her story. "I have got an idea," exclaimed the lady. "Tomorrow, when you take the bread to the mountain, you will pray my Destiny to speak to yours, and entreat her to leave you in peace. Perhaps something may come of it." At these words, Catherine dried her eyes, and the next morning, when she climbed the mountain, she told all that she had suffered and cried, "Oh, Destiny, my mistress, pray, I entreat you, of my Destiny that she may leave me in peace." And Destiny answered, "Oh, my poor girl, know you not your Destiny lies buried under 7 coverlids and can hear nothing? But if you will come tomorrow, I will bring her with me." And after Catherine had gone home, away with her lady's Destiny, to find her sister, she said to her, "Dear sister, has not Catherine suffered enough? Is it surely time for her good days to begin?" And the sister answered, "Tomorrow you shall bring her to me, and I shall give her something that may help her out of her need." The next morning, Catherine set out earlier than usual for the mountain, and her lady's Destiny took the girl by the hand and led her to her sister, who lay under 7 coverlids. And her Destiny held out to Catherine a ball of silk, saying, "Keep this, you may find it useful some day." Then she pulled the covers back over her head. But Catherine walked sadly down the hill and went straight to her lady and showed her the silken ball, which was the end of all her high hopes. "What shall I do with it?" she asked. "It is not worth 6pence, and it is of no good to me." "Shh! Take care of it," replied her mistress. Who can tell how useful it may be? A little while after this, grand preparations were made for the king's marriage, and all the tailors in the town were busy embroidering fine clothes. The wedding garment was so beautiful, nothing like it had ever been seen before, but when it was almost finished, the tailor found that he had no more silk. The color was very rare, and none could be found like it, and the king made a proclamation that if anyone happened to possess any, they should bring it to the court, and he would give them a large sum. "Catherine," exclaimed the lady, who had been to the tailor's and had seen the wedding garment, "your ball of silk is exactly the right color. Bring it to the king, and you can ask what you like for it." Then Catherine put on her best clothes and went to the court, and looked more beautiful than any woman there. "May it please your majesty," she said, "I have brought you a ball of silk of the color you had asked, as no one else has any for the town." "Your majesty," asked one of the courtiers, "shall I give the maiden its weight in gold?" The king agreed, and a pair of scales were brought, and a handful of gold was placed on one scale and the silken ball on the other. But lo, let the king lay in its scales as many gold pieces as he would. The silk was always heavier. Then the king took some larger scales and heaped all his treasures on one side, and the silk on the other outweighed them all. At last there was only one thing left that had to be put in, and that was his gold crown. He took it from his head and set it on top of all, and at last the scale moved and the ball found its balance. "Where got you this silk?" asked the king. "It was given me, royal majesty, by my mistress," replied Catherine. "That is not true," said the king, "and if you do not tell me the truth, I will have your head cut off this instant." So Catherine told him the whole story and how she had once been as rich as he. Now there lived in the court a wise woman, and she said to Catherine, "You have suffered much, my poor girl, but at length your luck has turned, and I know by the weighing of the scales through the crown that you will die a queen." "So she shall," cried the king, who overheard these words. "She shall die my queen, for she is more beautiful than any of the ladies at court, and I will marry no one else." And so it fell out. The king sent the bride he had promised to wed back to her own country, and the same Catherine was the queen at the marriage feast instead, and lived happy and contented till the end of her life. And we have ads coming up in less than 2 minutes. So I will get those started early so we can get back to stories so much earlier. See you in a bit. Welcome back. Okay. It's like a minute between I say something when I actually hear it. But yes, we're back from ads. Well, not even a minute. It's like 30 seconds, but so. Ow, cat, would you stop clawing my leg? I love you, buddy. I do. But I don't need your claws in my leg. No. Okay. But anyway, back to the Tales of Fairies and the Fairies of Tales. Not a single fairy has been mentioned. Well, no, we did have fairies in one story. It's amazing how many fairy tales don't involve fairies. No, like 4 fairies, 1 story. This is the 4th story. There's only been 1 with fairies in it. But anyway. Our 4th fabulous fairy tale for this Friday night. How the Hermit helped to win the king's daughter. Long ago there lived a very rich man who had 3 sons. When he felt himself to be dying, he divided his property between them, making them all share alike, both in money and lands. Soon after he died, the king set forth a proclamation through the whole country that whoever could build a ship that would float both on land and sea should marry his daughter for a wife. The eldest brother, when he heard it, said to those, "I think I will spend some of my money and try to build that ship. I should like to have a king as a father-in-law." So he called together all the shipbuilders in the land and gave them orders to begin the ship without delay. And trees were cut down and great preparations made, and in a few days everybody knew what it was all for, and there was a crowd of old people pressing around the gates of the yard, where the young men spent most of his day. "Master, give us work," they said, "so that we can earn our bread." But he only gave them hard words and spoke roughly to them. "You are old and you have lost your strength. Of what use are you?" And he drove them away. Then some young boys prayed him, "Master, please give us work." But he answered them, "Of what use can you be? Weaklings as you are, you are gone." And if anyone presented themselves that were not skilled workmen, he would have none of them. At last there knocked at the gate a little old man with a long white beard, and said, "Will you give me work so that I may earn my bread?" But he was only driven away like the rest. The ship took a long while to build, and cost a great deal of money, and when it was launched, a sudden squall rose, and it fell to pieces, and with it all the young man's hopes of winning the princess. By this time he had not a penny left, so he went back to his 2 brothers and told his tale. And the second brother said to himself as he listened, "Carefully, certainly he has managed very badly. I should like to see if I can't do better, and, win the princess for my own self." So he called together all the shipbuilders throughout the country and gave them orders to build a ship which could float on land as well as on the sea. But his heart was no softer than his brother's, and every man that was not a skilled workman was chased away with hard words. Last came the white-bearded man, but he fared no better than the rest. When the ship was finished, the launch took place, and everything seemed to be going smoothly until a gale sprang up and the vessel was dashed to pieces on the rocks. The young man had spent his whole fortune on it, and now it was all swallowed up, so that he was forced to beg shelter from his youngest brother, who he then told the story to his younger brother, and he said to himself, "Well, I'm not rich enough to support all 3. I'd better take my turn. If I manage to win the princess, there will be her fortune as well as my own for us to live on." So he called together all the shipbuilders in the kingdom and gave orders that they should build his ship. Then all the old people came and asked for work, and he answered cheerfully, "Oh yes, there's plenty for everybody." And then the boys begged to be allowed to help find something they could do. And when the old man with the long white beard came before him, praying that he might earn his bread, he replied, "Oh, father, I could not suffer you to work, but you shall be overseer and look after the rest." Now the old man was a holy hermit, and when he saw how kind-hearted the youth was, he determined to do all he could for him to gain the wish of his heart. By and by, when the ship was finished, the hermit said to his young friend, "Now you can go and claim the king's daughter, for the ship will float by land and sea." "Oh, good father," cried the young man, "you will not forsake me. Stay with me, I pray you, and lead me to the king." "If you wish it, I will," said the hermit, "on condition that you will give me half of anything you got." "Oh, if that is all," answered he, "it is easily promised." And they set out together on the ship. After a while they had gone some distance, and they saw a man standing in a thick fog, which he was trying to put into a sack. "Oh, good father," exclaimed the youth, "what can he be doing?" "Well, ask him." "There, what are you doing, my fine fellow?" "I'm putting the fog into my sack. That's my business." "Ask him if you will come with us," whispered the hermit, and the man answered, "If you will give me enough to eat and drink, I will gladly stay with you." So they took him on their ship, and the youth said as they started off again, "Good father, before we were 2, and now we're 3. After they had traveled a little further, they met a man who had torn up half of the forest and was carrying all the trees on his shoulders. "Good father," exclaimed the youth, "only look, what can he have done that for?" "Well, ask him why he's torn up all those trees." And the man replied, "I've merely been gathering a handful of brushwood." "Beg him to come with us," answered the hermit. And the strong man answered, "Willingly, as long as you give me enough to eat and drink." And he came on board the ship. And you said to the hermit, "Good father, before we were 3, and now we are 4. The ship traveled on again, and some miles further on they saw a man drinking out of a stream, till he had nearly drunk it dry. "Good father," said the youth, "just look at that man. Did you ever see anybody drink like that?" "Hey, Maiko." An existential snake raid, huh? Thank you for coming in and bringing me with you. No problem. How'd the rest of the stream go? Thank you for the hydrate, Guilty. I guess I'll search while I'm at it. I'm getting head pats too. Wow. Now, if you need to relax, because, well, I know you typically do after your streams, feel free, stretch out, hang out, listen. See, yep, Kill did do the shout out. She didn't do her usual lyrical one. That's weird. Yeah, I get some hot tea and doze off to the wonderful sound of me reading fairy tales. So far, there's been a couple of violent ones tonight. And thank you for coming in. Let's see. Where was I? Okay. No. See, right now we're doing the Hermit who helped win the King's Daughter. So. And there's Kel advertising the local animal rehab that I tend to work with occasionally. Anyway. Where was I? We were at the Drinking Man. Yeah, let's have that one. The ship traveled on again, and some miles further down, I saw a man drinking out of a stream until he had nearly drunk it dry. "Good father," said the youth, "just look at that man. Did you ever see anyone drink like that?" "Ask him why he does it," answered the hermit. "There's nothing very odd about a man drinking a mouthful of water," replied the man, standing up. "Beg him to come with us." And so the youth did. "With pleasure, as long as you can give me enough to eat and drink." And so the youth whispered to the hermit, "Good father, before we were 4 and now we are 5. A little way along, they noticed another man in the middle of a stream who was shooting into the water. "Good father, where can he be shooting at?" "Ask him," answered the hermit. "Hush, hush," cried the man. "You're frightened away. In the underworld sits a quail on a tree, and I wanted to shoot it. That is my business, and I hit anything I aim for." "Ask him if he'll come with us." And the man replied, "Oh, with all my heart, as long as I can get enough to eat and drink." So they took him into the ship, and the young man whispered, "Good father, before we were 5, and now we are 6. Off they went again, and before they had gone far, they met a man striding towards them, whose steps were so long that while one foot was on the north of the island, the other was right down in the south. "Good father, look at him! What long steps he takes!" "Ask him why he does it," replied the hermit. "Oh, I'm only going out for a little walk," answered he. "Ask him if he'll come with us." "Gladly, if you give me as much as I need to drink." And he climbed up into the ship. And the young man whispered, "Good father, before there were 6, and now we're 7. But the hermit knew what he was about, and why he gathered these strange people into the ship. After many days, at last they reached the town where lived the king and his daughter. They stopped the vessel right in front of the palace, and the young men went in and bowed low before the king. "Oh, Majesty, I have done your bidding, and now is the ship that can travel over land and sea. Give me my reward and let me have your daughter to wife." But the king said to himself, "What? Am I to wed my daughter to a man whom I know nothing of, not even whether he is rich or poor, a knight or a beggar?" And aloud he spoke, "It is not enough that you have managed to build a ship. You must find a runner who shall take this letter to the ruler of the underworld and bring me back the answer in an hour." "That is not in the bond," answered the young man. "Well, do as you like," replied the king. "Only you will not get my daughter." The young man went out, sorely troubled, to tell his old friend what had happened. "Silly boy," cried the hermit. "Accept his terms at once and send off the long-legged man with the letter. He will take it in no time at all." So the youth's heart leapt for joy and returned to the king. "Majesty, I accept your terms. Here is a messenger who will do what you wish." The king had no choice but to give the man the letter, and he strode off, making short work of the distance that lay between the palace and the underworld. He soon found the ruler, who looked at the letter and said to him, "Wait a little while I write your answer." But the man was so tired with his quick walk that he went sound asleep and forgot all about his errand. All this time the youth was anxiously counting the minutes till he could come back, and stood with his eyes fixed on the road down which the messenger had come. "What can be keeping him?" he said to the hermit when an hour was nearly up. Then the hermit just sent for the man who could hit anything he aimed for, and said to him, "Just see why the messenger stays so long." "Oh, he is sound asleep in the palace in the underworld. However, I can wake him." Then he drew his bow and shot an arrow straight into the man's knee. The messenger awoke with such a start, and when he saw that the hour had almost run, he had snatched up the answer and rushed back with such speed that the clock had not yet struck when he entered the palace. Now the young man thought he was sure of his bride, but the king said, "Still, you have not done enough. Before I give you my daughter, you must find a man who can drink half the contents of my cellar in one day." "That was not in the bond," complained the young youth. "Well, do as you like, only you will not get my daughter." The young man went sadly out and asked the hermit what he was to do. "Silly boy," he said. "Tell the man to do it who drinks up everything." So they sent for the man and said, "Do you think you will be able to drink half the royal cellar in one day?" "Dear me, yes, and so much more if these want," he answered. "I am never satisfied." The king was not pleased at the young man agreeing so readily, but he had no choice, and ordered the servant to be taken downstairs. Oh, how he enjoyed himself, as all day long he drank and drank and drank, till instead of half the cellar he had drunk it whole, and there was not a cask but what stood empty. And when the king saw this, he said to the youth, "You have conquered, and I can no longer withhold my daughter, but as a dowry I will only give so much as one man can carry away." "But," he answered, "let a man ever so strong, he cannot carry more than 100 weight, and what is that for a king's daughter?" "Well, do as you like. I have said my say. It is your affair, not mine." The young man was puzzled and did not know what to reply, for though he would gladly have married the princess without a sixpence, he had spent all his money building the ship, and knew he could not give her all she wanted. So he went to the hermit and said to him, "The king will only give her the dowry as much as a man can carry. I have no money of my own left, and my brothers have none either." "Silly boy, why you've only got to fetch the man who carried half the forest on his shoulders." And the youth was glad and called the strong man and told him what he must do. "Take everything you can till you are bent double. Never mind if you leave the palace bare." The strong man promised and nobly kept his word. He piled all he could see on his back, chairs, tables, wardrobes, chests of gold and silver, till there was nothing left to pile. At last he took the king's crown and put it on top. Hey, Papa. He carried his burden to the ship and stowed his treasures away, and the youth followed, leading the king's daughter. But the king was left raging in his empty palace, and he called together his army and got his ships off for war, in order that he might go after the vessel and bring back what had been taken away. The king's ships sailed very fast, and soon caught up with the little vessel, and the sailors all shouted for joy. Then the hermit looked out and saw how near they were, and said to the youth, "Do you see that?" The youth shrieked and cried, "Oh, good father, it's a fleet of ships, and they're chasing us. In a few moments it will be upon us." But the hermit bade him call upon the man who had fog in his sack. And the sack was opened, and the fog flew and hung right around the king's ships, so they could see nothing at all. So they sailed back to the palace and told the king what strange things had happened. Meanwhile, the young man's vessel reached home in safety. "Well, here you are once more," said the hermit, "and now you can fulfill the promise you made me and give me the half of all you had." "That I can do with all my heart," answered the youth, and began to divide his treasures, putting part on his side for himself and the other on the other side for his friend. "Good father, it is finished," he said at length. "There is nothing more to divide." "Nothing more left?" cried the hermit. "Why, you've forgotten the best thing of all." "What can that be? We have divided everything." "And the king's daughter?" The young man's heart stood still, for he loved her dearly, but he answered, "It is well, I've sworn, and I will keep my word." And he drew his sword and cut her to pieces. When the hermit saw this, he held his honor dearer than his wife. He lifted his hand and cried, "Oh, she is yours, and all the treasures too. I gave you my help because you had pity on those who were in need, and when you are in need yourself, call upon me, and I will come to you." As he spoke, he softly touched their heads and vanished. The next day, the wedding took place, and the two brothers came to the house, and they all lived happily together. But they never forgot the holy man who had been such a good friend. Well, I guess we got Diced Princess in the story. She was put back together, so it's fine. Oh, fairy tales. How you doing, Papa Penguin? Thank you for lurking around. Let's see what she'll say this time. Oh, there we go. What? That was Papa Penguin 369. knew that Papa Penguin V. What the hell? Kel, are you high? Oh, because I typed it wrong. Oh. I missed an N. Try it again. There we go. Much better. And Kel is apparently in Shakespearean mode. That was weird. Okay. So our fifth tale for this fabulous Friday Night of Fairy Tales. The Water of Life. 3 brothers and 1 sister lived together in a small cottage, and they loved one another dearly. One day, the eldest brother, who had never done anything but amuse himself from sunrise to sunset, said to the rest, "Let us all work hard, and perhaps we shall grow rich, and be able to build ourselves a palace." And his brothers and sisters answered joyfully, "Yes, we will all work." So they fell to working with all their might, till at last they became rich, and were able to build themselves a beautiful palace, and everyone came from miles around to see its wonders, and to say how splendid it was. No one thought of finding any fault, till at length an old woman who had been walking through one of the rooms of the splendid and a full crowd of people exclaimed suddenly, "Yes, it is a splendid palace, but there is something it needs." "And what may that be?" "A church." When they heard this, the brothers set to work again to earn some more money, and when they got enough, they set to building a church, which should be as large and as beautiful as the palace itself. And after the church was finished, greater numbers of people than ever flocked to see the palace and the church, and the vast gardens and magnificent halls. But one day, as the brothers were their usual doing the honors of their guests, one old man turned to them and said, "Yes, it is all most beautiful, but there's still something it needs." "And what may that be?" "A pitcher of the water of life, a branch of the tree the smell of whose flowers gives eternal beauty, and a talking bird." "Where am I going to find all of those?" "Go to the mountain that is far off yonder, and you will find what you seek." After the old man had bowed politely and taken farewell of the eldest brother, he said to the rest, "I will go in search of the water of life, the talking bird, and the tree of beauty." "But suppose some evil thing befalls you," asked his sister. "How shall we know?" "You are right," he said. "I had not thought of that." Then they followed the old man and said to him, "My oldest brother wishes to seek the water of life, the tree of beauty, and the talking bird, that you tell him are needful to make our palace perfect, but how will we know if anything evil befalls him?" So the old man took them a knife and gave it to them, and saying, "Keep this carefully. As long as the blade is bright and shiny, all is well. But if the blade is bloody, then know that even evil has befallen him." The brothers thanked him and departed, and went straight to the palace, where they found the young man making ready to set out for the mountain where the treasures he longed for lay hid. And And he walked, and he walked, and he walked, till he had gone a great way, and there he met a giant. Can you tell me how much further I still have to go before I reach that mountain yonder? And why do you wish to go there? I'm seeking the water of life, the talking bird, and a branch of the tree of beauty. Many have passed by seeking those treasures, but none have ever come back, and you will never come back either unless you mark my words. Follow this path, and when you reach the mountain, you will find it covered with stones. Do not stop to look at them, but keep on your way. As you go, you will hear scoffs and laughs behind you, but it will be the stones that mock. Do not heed them. Above all, do not turn around. If you do, you will become as one of them. Walk straight on till you get to the top, then take all you wish for. The young man thanked him for his counsel, and walked and walked and walked till he reached the mountain. And as he climbed, he heard behind him scoffs and jeers, but kept his ears steadily closed to them. Alas, the noise grew so loud that he lost his patience, and he stooped to pick up a stone and hurl it into the midst of the clamor, when suddenly his arms seemed to stiffen, and the next moment he himself was a stone. That day his sister, who thought her brother's steps were long in returning, took out the knife and found the blade was red as blood. She cried to her brothers that something terrible has come to pass. I will go and find him, said the second, and he went. And he walked, and he walked, and he walked, till he too met the giant, and asked him if he had seen a young man traveling towards the mountain. And the giant answered, Yes, I have seen him pass, but I have not seen him come back. The spell must have worked upon him. Then what can I do to disenchant him and find the water of life, the talking bird, and the branch of the tree of beauty? Follow this path, and when you reach the mountain, you will find it covered with stones. Do not stop to look at them, but climb steadily on. Above all, heed not the laughs and scoffs that will arise on all sides, and never turn around. And when you reach the top, you can take then all that you desire. And the young man thanked him for his counsel, and set out for the mountain. But no sooner did he reach it than loud jests and jibes broke out on every side, and almost deafened him. For some time he let them rail, and pushed boldly on, till it passed the place where his brother had gained. Then suddenly he thought that among the scoffing laughs he heard his brother's voice. He stopped and looked back, and another stone was added to the number. Meanwhile, the sister, left at home, was counting days when her two brothers should return to her. The time seemed long, and it would be hard to say how often she took out the knife and looked at its polished blade to make sure that at least one was still safe. The blade was always bright and clear, each time she looked at it, in the happiness of knowing that all was well, till one evening, tired and anxious, as she frequently was at the end of the day, she took it from a drawer, and behold, the blade was as red as blood. Her cry of horror brought the youngest brother to her, and unable to speak, she held out the knife. I will go, he said. So he walked, and he walked, and he walked until he met the giant, and asked, Have two men making for yonder mountain passed this way? And the giant answered, Yes, they have passed by, but they never came back. But by this I know that the spell has befallen upon them. Then what must I do to free them and get the water of life, the talking bird, and the branch of the tree of beauty? Go to the mountain. You will find so thickly covered with stones that you will hardly be able to place your feet, and walk straight forward, turning neither to the right nor to the left. paying no heed to the laughs and scoffs which will follow you until you reach the top. Then you may take all that you desire." The young man thanked the giant for his counsel and set forth to the mountain. And when he began to climb, there burst all around him a storm of scoffs and jeers. But he thought of the giant's words and looked neither right nor left, for the mountaintop lay straight before him. A moment now, and he would have gained it, when, through the groans and yells, he heard his brothers' voices. He turned, and there was one more stone. And all this while his sister, pacing up and down the palace, hardly taking the knife out of her hand, and dreading for what she knew, what she would see, and what she did see. The blade grew red before her eyes, and she said, "Now it is my turn." So she walked, and she walked, and she walked till she came to the giant, and prayed him to tell her if he had seen 3 young men pass this way seeking the distant mountain. "I have seen them pass, but they have never returned, and by this I know that the spell has fallen upon them." "And what must I do to set them free and find the water of life, the talking bird, and a branch of the tree of beauty?" "You must go to that mountain, which is so full of stones that your feet will hardly find a place to tread. And as you climb, you will hear a noise as if all the stones in the world were mocking you. But pay no heed to anything you may hear, and once you gain the top, you have gained everything." The girl thanked him for his counsel and set out for the mountain, and scarcely had she gone a few steps upward when she heard screams and cries breaking forth around her, and she felt as if each stone she trod on was a living thing. But she remembered the words of the giant and knew not what had befallen her brothers, and kept her face steadily towards the mountain top, where she grew nearer and nearer at every moment. But as she mounted, the clamor increased 7-fold. High above them all rang the voices of her 3 brothers. But the girl paid no heed, and at last took her feet to the top and stood. Then she looked around and saw, lying in a hollow, the pool of water of life, and she took the brazen pitcher that she had brought with her and filled it to the brim. By the side of the pool stood the tree of beauty, with a talking bird on one of its boughs. She caught the bird and placed it in a cage and broke off one of the branches. After that she turned and went joyfully down the hill again, carrying her treasures. But her long climb had tired her out, and the brazen pitcher was so heavy, and she spilled a few drops and spilt on the stones, and as it touched them, they changed into young men and maidens, crowding about her to give thanks for their deliverance. So she learnt by this how the evil spell might be broken, and she carefully sprinkled every stone till there was not one left, only a great company of youths and girls who followed her down the mountain. When they arrived at the palace, she did not lose a moment in planting the tree branch of the tree of beauty and watering it with the water of life. And the branch shot up into a tree and was heavy with flowers, and the talking bird nestled in its branches. Now the fame of these wonders was noised abroad, and the people flocked in great numbers to see the 3 marvels, and the maiden who had won them. And among the sightseers came a king's son, who would not know to do everything until it was shown him, until he had heard how it all happened. And the prince admired the strangeness and beauty of the treasures of the palace, but more than all, he admired the beauty and courage of the maiden who had brought them there. So he went home and told his parents, and gained their consent to wed her for his wife. Then a marriage was celebrated in the church adjoining the palace. Then the bridegroom took her to his own home, where they lived happily forever after. Thank you for the hydrate and stretch, Cutie. don't know why the sound alert didn't go off. Other than my sound alert's not going to go off. And it still didn't go off. Oh, I tried to. Okay, well. Sorry about that. Let's see. Hey, Abby. How long is this next one? Let's see, the Wounded Lion. How long is this one? Mine is 8 pages. Yeah, I'm gonna read it. This is Friday. This is 6th story tonight, I think. Yep, we'll do a 6th story. So, our 6th and possibly final story for the evening. The Wounded Lion. There was once a girl so poor that she had nothing to live on, and wandered about the world asking for charity. One day she arrived at a thatched cottage, and inquired if they could give her any work. The farmer said he wanted a cowherd, and his own had left him, and if the girl liked the place she might take it. And so she became a cowherd. One morning she was driving her cows through the meadows when she heard a loud groan that almost sounded human. She hastened to the spot from which the noise came, and found it proceeded from a lion who lay stretched upon the ground. Well, you can guess how frightened she was, but the lion seemed in such pain that she was sorry for him, and drew nearer and nearer until she saw that he had a large thorn in one foot. She pulled out the thorn and bound up the place, and the lion was grateful and licked her hand by way of thanks with his big rough tongue. When the girl had finished, she went back to find the cows, but they had gone, and though she hunted everywhere she never found them, and she had to return home and confess to her master, who scolded her bitterly, and afterwards beat her. Then he said, "Now you will have to look after these asses." So every day she had to take the asses to the woods to feed, until one morning, exactly a year after she had found the lion, she heard a groan which sounded quite human. She went straight to the place from which the noise came, and, to her surprise, beheld the same lion stretched on the ground with a deep wound across his face. This time she was not afraid at all, and ran towards him, washing the wound and laying soothing herbs upon it. And when she had bound it up, the lion thanked her in the same manner as before. After she returned to her flock, but they were nowhere to be seen. She searched here and she searched there, but they had vanished completely. Then she had to go home and confess to her master, who first scolded her and afterwards beat her. "Now go," he ended, "and look after the pigs." So the next day she took out the pigs, and found them such good feeding grounds that they grew fatter every day. Another year passed by, and one morning when the maiden was out with the pigs, she heard a groan which sounded quite human. She ran to see what it was, and found her old friend the lion, wounded through and through, fast dying under a tree. She fell on her knees before him, and washed his wounds one by one, and laid healing herbs upon them, and the lion licked her hands and thanked her, and asked if she would not stay and sit with him. But the girl said she had her pigs to watch, and she must go and see after them. So she ran to the place where she had left them, but they had all vanished as if the earth had swallowed them up. She whistled and called, but only the birds would answer. Then she sank down to the ground and wept bitterly, not daring to return home until some hours had passed away. And when she had finished crying, she got up and searched all up and down in the wood, but it was of no use. There was not a sign of the pigs. At last she thought that perhaps if she climbed a tree she might see further. But sooner she seated on the highest branch, and something happened which put the pigs quite out of her head. This was a handsome young man who was coming down the path, and when he had almost reached the tree, he pulled aside a rock and disappeared behind it. The maiden rubbed her eyes and wondered if she had been dreaming. She thought next, "I will not stir from here until I see him come out, and discover who he is." Accordingly, she waited, and at dawn the next morning the rock moved to one side, and a lion came out. When he had quite gone out of sight, the girl climbed down from the tree and went to the rock, which she pushed aside, and entered the opening before her. The path led to a beautiful house. She went in and swept and dusted the furniture and put everything tidy. Then she ate a very good dinner which was on the shelf in the corner, and once clambered up again to the top of her tree. At sunset she saw the same young man walking gaily down the path, and as before he pushed aside the rock and disappeared behind it. Next morning out came the lion. He looked sharply about him on all sides, but saw no one, and then vanished into the forest. The maiden came down from the tree and did exactly as she had done the day before, and thus 3 days went by, and every day she went and tidied up the paths. At length, when the girl found she was no nearer to discovering the secret, she resolved to ask him, and in the evening when she caught sight of him coming through the wood, she came down from the tree and begged him to tell her his name. The young man looked very pleased to see her, and said he thought it must be she who had secretly kept his house for so many days, and he asked that he was a prince enchanted by a powerful giant, but was only allowed to take his own shape at night, for all day he was forced to appear as the lion whom she had helped so often. And, more than this, it was a giant who had stolen the oxen and asses and the pigs in revenge for her kindness. And the girl asked him, "What can I do to disenchant you?" But he said he was afraid it was very difficult, because the only way was to get a lock of hair from the head of the king's daughter, to spin it and to make it into a cloak for the giant, who lived up on top of the high mountain. "Very well," answered the girl. "I've got to go to the city and knock at the door of the king's palace, and ask the princess to take me as her servant." And so they parted, and she arrived at the city. She walked to the streets crying, "Who will hire me for a servant? Who will hire me for a servant?" But though many people liked her looks, for she was clean and neat, the maid would not listen to none, and continued crying, "Who will hire me for a servant? Who will hire me for a servant?" At last there came a waiting maid of the princess. "What can you do?" she said, and the girl was forced to confess that she could do very little. "Then you will have to do a scullion's work and wash up dishes," she said, and they went straight back to the palace. Then the maiden dressed her hair fresh and made herself look very neat and smart, and everyone admired and praised her, till by and by it came to the ears of the princess, and she was sent for the girl, and when she saw her and how beautifully she had dressed her hair, the princess told her she was to come and to comb out hers. Now, the hair of the princess was very thick and long, and shone like the sun, and the girl combed it till it was brighter than ever. And the princess was pleased, and bade her come every day to comb her hair, till the length of the girl took courage, and begged to leave one cut off of the long thin locks. The princess, who was very proud of her hair, did not like the idea of parting with any of it, so she said no. But the girl could not give up hope, and each day she entreated to allow to be cut off one of the tresses. At length the princess lost patience and exclaimed, "You may have it, then, on condition that you shall find the handsomest prince in the world to be my bridegroom." And the girl answered that she would, and cut off the lock, and wove it into a coat that glittered like silk, and brought it to the young man, who told her to carry it straight to the giant, but that she would be careful to cry out a long way off that she had with her, or else he would spring upon her and run her through with his sword. Hey, Saxon. So the maiden departed and climbed up the mountain, but before she reached the top, the giant heard her footsteps, and rushed out, breathing fire and flame, and having a sword in one hand and a club in the other. But she cried loudly that she had brought him the coat, and then he grew quiet, and invited her to come into his house. He tried on the coat, but it was too short, and he threw it off and declared it was of no use. And the girl picked it up sadly and returned quite in despair to the king's palace. The next morning, as she was combing the princess's long hair, she begged leave to cut off another lock. At first the princess said no, and the girl begged so hard that at length she gave in on the condition that she should find her a prince as a bridegroom. The maiden told her she had already found him, and spun the lock into a shining stuff, and fastened it on the end of the coat, and when it was finished she carried it off to the giant. This time it fitted him, and he was quite pleased, and asked her what he could give her in return, and she said only the reward that he could give her was to take the spell off the lion and bring him back to his own shape. For a long time the giant would not hear of it, but in the end he gave in, and told her exactly how it all must be done. She was to kill the lion herself and cut him up into very small, and then she must burn him and cast his ashes into the water, and out of the water the prince would come free of the enchantment forever. But the maiden went away weeping, lest the giant should have deceived her, and that after she had killed the lion she would have had no other. She would have also have slain the prince. Weeping she came down the mountain, and weeping she joined the prince, who was waiting her at the bottom. And when he had heard her story, he comforted her and bade her to be of good courage, and to do the bidding of the giant. And the maiden believed what the prince told her, and in the morning when he put on his lion's form, she took a knife and slew him, and cut him up into small pieces and burnt him, and tossed the ashes into the water. And out of the water came the prince, beautiful as the day, and as glad to look upon the sun as himself. And then the young man thanked the maiden for all she had done for him, and said she should be his wife, and none other. But the maiden only wept sore, and answered that she could never be, for she had given her promise to the princess, when she cut off her hair, that the prince should wed her, and her only. But the prince replied, "If it is the princess, we must go quickly. Come with me." So they went together to the king's palace, and when the king and queen and the princess saw the young man, with great joy filled their hearts, for they knew, for the eldest son, who had long ago been enchanted by a giant, had been lost to them. And he asked his parents' consent that he might marry the girl who had saved him, and a great feast was made, and the maiden became a princess, and in due time the queen, and she richly deserved all the honors that were showered upon her. And no, I don't know why I decided to tell the story in that voice, other than me liking to use that voice. Anyway, I will. Oh, the final ads are in 3 minutes. I'm going to snooze them anyway. Well, I don't know. Are you getting ready to start, Saxon? Because I can send it over to you if you would like. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, it is less than 2 weeks until my affiliate anniversary. And I still have no freaking clue what I'm doing. Okay. We'll get started so I can read you. Thank you. I'm going to snooze the ads anyway. But anyway, everyone, that was our Friday night of fairy tales. We made it through 6 stories. I will try to get things edited as soon as I can and get the individual stories taken care of and load them up on YouTube. So they'll be there tomorrow night. Though if you go over now, my Rivals of Sherlock Holmes should be coming out in a few minutes too. But we are going to I can't see my keyboard. But we will be going there. Feel free to give them a follow and such. I guess they're still going to be reading West East. I don't know. Oh. Yeah. Still doing Monkey King, I guess. Yeah. Journey to the West. Let's see. Okay. They have just started. So if my lovely assistant Kel will post the right messages. That would be those. Thank you, Kel. And we will see you all hopefully next week when I will get to do more Rivals of Sherlock Holmes on Thursday, and we'll do some more Fairy Tales from the Pink Fairy Book on Friday. Hope I will see you all there. Say your prayers, little one. Don't forget, my son, to include everyone. Tuck you in, warm within, keep you free from sin, till the Sandman he comes. Sleep with one eye open, gripping your pillow tight. Exit light, enter night. Take my hand, we're off to Never Neverland. Something's wrong, shut the light. Heavy thoughts tonight, and they aren't of Snow White. Dreams of war, dreams of liars, dreams of dragons, fire, and the things that will bite. Sleep with one eye open, gripping